Hi, my name is Ayo Mairo-Ese. I'm a broadcaster with Rise News. I'm one of the co-anchors on the morning show, daily weekday breakfast show. I am delighted to be here, just speaking with Just for Women Africa, and I look forward to an honest, real conversation this today.
Can you tell us about your journey into broadcasting? What inspired you to pursue a career in media?
Interestingly, I studied international relations at university, Swansea University to be exact. And I thought I'd started off working in the not-for-profit sector and also doing a bit of politics as well. I was very interested in politics right from university. And so it wasn't as if I had this grand plan to go into media. However, I recognized that I had a talent, a flair for hosting and speaking in public, and thought, okay, I could pursue that since I did it very well and I hosted events and people have started to pay me. So I thought, okay, I could pursue doing this as a career. And that's how my surgeon when into broadcasting started. I cut my teeth at Cool TV, now Wazobia Max TV station, and also on radio at Nigeria Info FM. And so that's where I had my opportunity to really get into broadcasting. And since then, over 10 years ago, I've been on either TV or radio.
You have worked in TV, radio, and now Arise News Channel. How do you adapt to the unique demands of each platform?
All right. So they're actually, thanks for using the word unique. Even though they are both broadcasting platforms, radio and TV are significantly different. Similar in some ways, but I would say that I used to say that TV is a bit more difficult, even though some people differ with me and say that no, radio is tougher because you had to. No, actually, radio I found radio a bit more difficult because with TV, there's a lot going on to support your craft. So there are visuals, graphics, and conversations happening. You usually might have a guest, and then there's a lot more than just your voice. Your errors can be easily overlooked because something else has distracted the viewer. But on radio, people can't see you, so they hear every single thing you're saying. And they can even hear the emotions in your voice. So when you're upset, when you're angry, when you're down, when you're high. So you have to always bring your full emotion into work. And by emotion, I mean, happy because your emotion affects the person, your listeners. And so you want to ensure that they are getting the best of you. However, TV, you can smile and I don't know, I just found TV a bit easier. But maybe Arise not so. Arise is going to university or going to school every day because you're studying as if you're going to an examination every single morning. So that's a different ballgame. I think it also depends on the kind of media you're doing. Radio has, for a country like Nigeria, radio has still has a wider reach because people listen to their radio on many devices. And then when they're driving to work, some people have their radio on when they're, you have people in rural areas who don't have access to television, who have their radios with them or radio platforms with them. But with TV, thank God for, social media like YouTube and cutouts you can put on Instagram and Facebook. It's become a bit wider. But TV, people connect with you a lot more. Radio, you can also be an anonymous voice. People just hear your voice, they don't see you. So you can have some sense or level of privacy. With TV, that's erased. So anything you do, they know that you're the person that they watch every morning, especially for a show like ours that happens every morning. So those are some of the dynamics of television and radio, I feel. But both of them, I really enjoyed working and I don't want to give up one for the other. They are both very essential media platforms in Nigeria.
What challenges have you faced as a woman in media, and how did you overcome them?
In the early days, I think it's even there's some that cut across different job choices or different career paths. And that is that you need to almost consistently prove yourself and uh feel like or demonstrate to people that you're more than a pretty face. It's just it's just cultural, and some people do it without even knowing. And you're often seen as, so you have to almost be tough, present yourself as being able to stand head and shoulders with the men. Those are some of the things I faced as being being a woman in media. I think that has significantly reduced since I started, but it's still there. So with the emergence of more women in TV, more women in media, it has helped to shape that narrative, because now we have female media owners who are now the ones employing and setting the policies and directions in the organizations. Besides that, I think that, and then of course, you cannot also rule out the harassment that happens. I'm careful now because it's a hot topic at the moment. So people, I don't want it to seem as if I'm bringing it up, but that's the truth. Oftentimes, when you depending on where you work, some people are more principled than others. There are favors that you have to do as a woman to get ahead. I hate to say that, because there are women who have really worked hard for where they are. And I don't want it to be as if every time you see a woman who's climbed the ladder, there must have been something she did. There must have been something that she did. So it's just that the pressure is there sometimes, and women have had to make very difficult decisions not to take a role, not to work in a certain organization because of the pressures they faced.
You have interviewed high-profile individuals like CNN's Richard Quest. What has this experience taught you?
Well, I mean, so for me, Richard Quest was incredible. It was great to interview him. Not just international figures. I think I've even had even more of an impression with some of our Nigerian African political or thought leaders. And it's just that thought that you have to come correct, if I can use that word term. You have to be prepared. Yeah, at that point when you're sitting with an interviewee, you have to match them head to head, toe to toe. You have to come with your facts. I learned something from my interview with Richard Quest. Please don't watch it so that you won't notice it. I'd given wrong statistics at one point, and he corrected me, but he was very gracious about it. And I remember I was like, oh my goodness, not on, but he was very gracious about it. The interview still went very well. And I thought, when you're working at that level, you can't afford to make errors. This was many years ago, so please, I've grown by God's grace. But I remember if I was such an embarrassment, I won't tell you the story. But don't, because I can, in the future I can deny that it was me, but that was what happened. Well, that's so. I think for me, one of the biggest lessons there is just, if you're going to play in the big league, you have to do the work that the people in the big league do. You cannot just go there and ask mundane questions or questions that carry no weight. You want to you must do your research extensively, and then be able to communicate to them at the level that they're used to. Those are the things I learned.
How has been named the 25 most powerful women in journalism in Nigeria influenced your career?
I remember the first time. So this is the second year consecutively, and thank God I moved up in the last ranking. And I remember the first time I got in, I was number 25, and that was enough for me. Because there's so many phenomenal women who are doing amazing things in media space in Nigeria. And to be recognized as the most powerful journalist in, across, was for me a big deal. From, they say the reward for hard work, the reward for good work is more work. That's what happened in this instance, because now you've been put almost on a pedestal and you have to defend it. It's often said that it's easier to get to the top than it is to remain at the top. It's easier to be, to achieve a record than it is to maintain or sustain the record, because best believe that the moment you get to get the record, someone else is looking to pursue the record or to break that record. So you have to be on your toes. And so for me, I think it encouraged me to see that I was doing something right and it was being recognized. And then it also gave me more fodder or more fuel to work even harder, that you're being seen, your work is being recognized. Don't rest on your oars. There is also an opportunity for you to be an example to others who are coming behind you. So you can't afford to not work hard.
According to the 2024 World Press Freedom Index, Nigeria ranked 112 globally, improving from 123 in 2023. What key steps can further elevate its ranking to the top 50?
That's a good question. I'm actually quite surprised that we went up in the ranking. I hope we won't go down now. Government has a government has a huge role to play when it comes to press freedom in any country, right? And I say this because you know the history. If you know the history of Nigeria, the reason why the press has thrived is because people have fought. It hasn't been an easy task. It wasn't an easily achieved feat. So I want to pay, a lot of respect and kudos to those who've gone ahead of us and who against all odds were still pushing out the stories, being the fourth estate of the realm, performing their constitutionally guaranteed duties. And so for every administration that comes in, one of the measures of how democratic the leader is or the president is just how friendly they are with the press. And when I say friendly, I mean that the leader must be willing to subject him or herself to scrutiny by the press. That is part of our jobs as the fourth estate of the realm. And so when you find uh, press people, journalists who are persecuted, let me use that word, because of a story they told that doesn't fit the narrative of the government of the day, and you cannot say that you have press freedoms. One of the things I would say is that leaders must be more tolerant of criticism. It's only a leader who doesn't understand the call of leadership that would want to only have sycophancy around him or her, or want only praise singers around him or her. That's one. Number two is that there must also be a cohesion amongst pressmen and women. I say this because, just as the saying goes, united we stand, divided we fall. When we stand united with one voice and not one person going to compromise or sell out the team on one way or the other, we're able to do a lot more and stand against any form of oppression. I also think the legislators, our lawmakers, have a role to play as well. They are the ones who check the executive, and they're the ones who make laws. There are laws that can be enacted to protect the freedom of pressmen and women. And these are some of the indices I believe that these rankers would consider. If I see that there are policies to protect press freedom in a nation, then it gives the right signal that these people are really serious. If I'm not reading in the news that one pressman or woman was arrested you don't even need to you don't even need traditional news now. Social media has made it even easier to disseminate information to different parts of the world. And so when you read things like that, it doesn't all go well for our ranking. So those are some of the things that I would say. Number one is that the spirit of leadership, so it must start from the head, from the top. And by this, I mean at the very top, the president. And then lawmakers have a role. And then judiciary as well, because actually the three tiers of government have a role to play. With regards to the judiciary, there also needs to be fairness and equity when cases like this appear in court. So if, for instance, a journalist is arrested and brought before the courts, the system and the process, and I made it not by judiciary, I mean the entire judicial process, right from the policeman, and all, it has to be seen to be fair and equitable. With that, I believe that would make a lot of gain. So if I have the confidence that even if the executive wants to trample on my rights, the moment I appear in courts, the court will back me because I'm backed by the law, then it makes press freedom even better. And then, like I said, I know we have the Guild of, we have the NUJ, National Union of Journalists, we have the Guild of Editors. They also come as a body to stand up for the rights of journalists in Nigeria. So I'm hoping, with those things, it would be helpful.
What strategies can be used to encourage more women in Africa to pursue careers in media?
Well, thank you for that question. I'm very big on inclusion, especially including women at all levels. And when it's my constituency, which is media and journalism, I'm very passionate about that. What are the ways? I think number one is role modeling. So I remember when I first started, and I had a lot of young women send me messages, no lies here, that, oh, they didn't think that it could. Then it was even more, I wasn't into news stories. I was on radio, but on TV, it was more entertainment. But on radio, I was doing a daily politics and current affairs show called The Morning Crossfire. But what the ladies saw was me on TV. And they would write to me saying, "Oh, I didn't know it was possible to keep my values, because I speak a lot about my values, my principles. My values and principles are based on my faith. I'm a Christian, and so I would be very vocal about this." And they would be like, they didn't know it was possible. They thought that everybody who was in media or was in that space had to compromise one way or the other. That was very encouraging for me. And so every time I did anything, I always, like I said earlier on, there's always that sense of responsibility that there are people who are looking up to me. And so the more we see women emerge, there are women who have done phenomenal work in journalism, media. We have the Mark Bears of Channels Television. We have the Dodger Allen of City FM. We have the Moabudus of Ebony Life. When you see women doing great things in that space, you're inspired. I have cousins, younger cousins, who have gone on to study international relations because they liked my trajectory, right? And I know people who would choose to study now go straight to media and journalism just because they're like, okay, I can do it because Ayo is doing it. And it's not just Ayo. There's the Oliver Modis of the news centrals. There's the Tomike Adeoyes. There's so many women who are doing that. So the more we have women like that who show that it is possible, the better it is for us to have more women aspire to be like that. If you don't see your kind in a place, it's difficult for you to imagine. It takes a lot of guts to be a pioneer or to be the first. But when you see more people in a space, they're more encouraged. I mean, they see just how good like in terms of the impact, the influence, then it's an encouragement for more women to come on board. I think that would be my primary, because other things in terms of, I don't think there's a lot of discrimination when it comes to study. If you go to journalism school, media school, you see a lot of women studying there. I also then, and so I think it's a level playing field to study journalism or media for women and men. So I wouldn't say that education is in any way a barrier at the moment. So those things, I mean, I feel like more women who are speaking out, who have been examples. For me, my role models who had gone ahead of me at the senior Orwell Browns, Ruth Benemesi Opias, these were women that we watched growing up and we wanted to be like. So it's great to see. And I've had Eugenia Abu, had the opportunity to meet some of them, and it's such an honor when they tell you that it's almost like they've handed the baton on to us. And now we're going to very soon hand the baton on to the younger generation of women. So yeah.
How important is networking for African women?
Well, thank you for that. So that's an answer to the previous question as well. Having networking groups for women as well, where there can also be opportunities for direct mentoring or indirect mentoring. So you would know what my response would be to that. It plays a very critical and crucial role. I've enjoyed the benefits of being a part of some women's groups. Some of the opportunities I've had have been from referrals or recommendations from within these women's groups. So they gave me the opportunity to do something, and from then on, I had, the door was open for me. Also, you're able to be taught. There are some peculiar challenges that women face, and there are some glass ceilings that need to be broken. These groups help to have women who've gone ahead share their experiences so that we don't have to also repeat the same mistakes or have to go through what they've been through. We have it a bit easier. So absolutely, there are groups like Wimbiz. There's a conference I go to in Dubai every year by Mrs. Ibuka Washika, who is a wonderful role model. The International Women Leadership Conference. So groups like this, absolutely. When it comes to media in its own, I know there are many media groups like that. I don't know a lot of them, but maybe it's time for us to have a lot more. I know there'll be the women wing of some places like NUJ and the likes, but it's very, very important. Like I said, there's power in numbers. And when we stand united, we're able to do a lot more than when one person is going at it.
If you weren't in media, what career path do you think you would have pursued?
I said I wanted to do politics or development work. Yeah, I wanted to go into. In fact, my first year, I studied politics and social policy before switching to international relations to give me a broader background in, because international relations is international politics. But while I was in university, I was very active in the student union. I ran for elections. I was part of the student council, so I would go for council meetings. I represented the Black and ethnic minority groups. I was part of voting on motions, attending conferences. So I was very, very big on politics. And I thought that one day, and maybe it's not over yet, but I would find my way in politics in some way, shape, or form.
What has been your most memorable interview over the years?
All right, so I think I've had a lot of interesting interviews. So I feel like if I see anything now, after this interview, oh my goodness, didn't mention this person or that person. But one I remember that I did, it was a one-on-one interview with the OPC leader, one of the faction leaders, Gani Adams. I was much younger in the industry then, and it was such a big deal for me at the time. And there were conflicts and things. So just to see this man that a lot of people had talked about, whether good or bad, in the press, I think, I just thought, and the extent of research I had to do, and being in the room with him as a young lady, then I was like, oh my goodness, I hope nothing, with due respect to him. But that's what the media does. When you read about someone, a figure, that for me was interesting. Also, when I interviewed Al Mustafa, who worked with Abacha, I also felt to say like, oh gosh, this is such an important interview because he was part of my growing up, not for good. His reputation preceded him. And then I also remember speaking to the United States envoy who had come to Nigeria to visit, very high level, and the US consul in Lagos had invited me to do an interview one-on-one with her as well. And I thought it was a really important part of my career development. I love telling human angle stories as well. I love curating the human stories and being able to draw out for my subject or from the person I'm interviewing. So any human angle story for me is always a hit. So those are some of the memorable interviews I've had so far, amongst many others.
Right. What's a fun fact about you that people do not know?
I think this fact a lot of people know because I tell what I love love. So when I tell people that one of my hobbies is reading, they think, oh yeah, of course, you're reading world politics and all. Now I'm reading romantic novels. That's how I like to relax. So that's one thing. And I like dancing as well. But in terms of how well, don't ask me. I just like dancing. So those are some of the things about me that I hope people find interesting. So if you want to be my friend, buy me a nice romance book. And when I'm free, when I have some free time, obviously, as you can imagine, I'm not able to read a lot, those kind of books. But when I have the opportunity, maybe when I'm on holiday, it's just a way to get away from the hardness of life and just be swept away by fantasy and lightheartedness.